Hey, are you coming along? Breathe in the love, open up your heart. And hey, are you coming on down? Bring in the light, open up your arms. And hey, are you coming along? Breathe in the love, open up your heart. And hey, are you coming on down? Bring in the light, open up your arms. Hey, hey, are you coming along? Are you coming along? Are you coming along? Hey, hey, are you coming along? Are you coming along? Are you coming along? Hey, yeah. Join the jubilation, hey, yeah. Join the celebration, hey. Are you coming along? Are you coming along? Are you coming along? Hey, are you coming along? Are you coming along? Are you coming along? Yeah.
Well, that is a look at not just one of South Africa's finest resorts, but indeed one of the world's. And don't just take my word from it. There are assorted tourism industry awards from around the world that have put Fancourt at the top of their list as a golf lifestyle holiday destination, and for many good reasons. One of them is the extraordinary collection of golf courses, 3 of the best in South Africa, ranked in the top 20 for as long as anybody can remember. The hotel is fabulous. The hospitality is wonderful. The garden route is an enchanting part of the world. But on top of all of that, there is also the allure of a rather polished wine list. And it's a wine list that purely for purposes of research, I've done a little bit of time looking into over the many years I've been coming to Fancourt. And so this evening, as I join you from the Dimension Data Pro-Am, the 27th edition of South Africa's premier Pro-Am golf event, I decided it'd be a good idea to have a look at the wine list at La Cantina, which is where I find myself this evening, the Italian restaurant at Fancourt. Have a look at that wine list, pick a few bottles from it, and also encourage a mate of mine to come and join me. And I'm going to bring that mate on screen in just a moment. He's a dear friend of mine, Schalk Burger Senior, not just a great Springbok, but also a man who has an encyclopedic knowledge of, well, most things, but in particular wine. We've drunk a lot of wine together over the years, and he's going to be introducing me to a rather special Chenin Blanc. Also joining me, but via the digital platform we use, we will be crossing down to Stellenbosch for 2 people who are very relevant to this evening's show. One of them is Louis Strydom, who is the winemaker and managing director at Ernie Els Wines. And he's the guy who got Ernie to sit down, taste the different wines, and create that Ernie Els signature that is now such an established international standard bearer for Stellenbosch red blends. And we head just down the road to another part of Stellenbosch and to a man who has, in the last year or two, been charged with overseeing one of South Africa's marquee brands. That brand is Meerlust, and the Meerlust Rubicon, still such a headline act for the South African wine offering. So those are my 3 guests live from Fancourt this evening. Groot Schalk Burger, and that Groot is completely in capital letters. Wim Truter from Meerlust and Louis Strydom from Ernie Els. So we'll cross to them in just a moment. Before we do that, though, a quick update on some news from the world of wine. On Monday is Valentine's Day. If you are furiously scrambling to find roses, or you found them online and discovered that they are 8 million rand a rose at the moment, you want something that's a little more manageable and something that you can share together, pink bubbles is the obvious way to go. Is it cliched? Well, ever so slightly, but the cliche is far overridden by the quality of some great rosé Cup Classiques. And this is one from Krona they've got going at the moment. And it's up in Tulbach. It's a specialist bubbles house. We've had the team on the show many times before. And so whether it's Krona or whether it is another South African Cup Classique, I think a bottle of pink bubbles on Valentine's Day, a far better investment than getting roses, which will be dead and kill your bank account. If you want to go further afield, this is also a fairly new release. This is a Nicolas Fouet, the French champagne brand. And this is a beautiful floral tribute to the art of French bubbles. Get a bottle of each, compare them, see how France and South Africa go. If you think, oh, well, champagne's going to blow Cap Classique out the water, you might just be ever so slightly surprised at just how well our South African Cap Classique shapes up against its French counterpart. And then also look out, I think came out today, Mr. Tim Atkin. There we go. We know him for his South Africa report. He does extraordinary research in South African wine and has become the definitive international voice on South African wine with his report each year. It's not the only one he does, though. His Rioja report came out today. £20. That's about 7 million rand. If you'd like to get hold of it, if you have an interest in European wine, that might be one to have a look at. Head over to timatkin.com. So there are a couple of pieces of news from the wine world. How about news from the golf world as we welcome in my very special guest, Schalk Burger Senior. Lovely to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Very nice to be here. You were quite kind to me last night. You took on Graham Smith and left me a bit out because normally when you've got the mic, you control everything. Today was a tough day. Didn't go very well. It was probably my worst game of golf, but I mean, I think I had to blame some Chenin Blanc for that last night. I think Ma'am Chenin, she got hold of me. But in any case, it's just nice here with all the friends and wonderful courses, like you said, and the banter and friendship.
It is indeed, and we'll be extending that into the show over the course of this hour with not just Schalk, but also two other prominent figures in South African wine. So let's say good evening to both of them. From Meerlust, it is Wim Truter, and from Ernie Els, Louis Strydom, who just dropped in. Gentlemen, good evening. Lovely to see you both. A warm welcome.
Perfect. Evening, Dan.
Great to have you on, and for a golf event it makes sense, Louis, to have Ernie Els on because he is a reasonable golfer and he's done okay in his time, but we look at him not just for the golf for this particular show, but for a love of wine that you and I have discussed of Ernie's many times before. Give us a recap, if you will, on the journey that you took Ernie Els through in terms of discovering wine and finding out what in particular was the wine that really worked for his palate.
Yes, and thanks, Dan. You know, it's been actually 2 decades of Ernie Els. This is our 22nd vintage for the Ernie Els, and it is really great to be part of the journey. And as correctly as you said, it's been an amazing journey. And the build up of the Ernie Els brand, and it really started way back in 2000. Ernie came to me and Jean as well. They said they really want to start a joint venture with the wine, and so I said, Ernie, you must make the decision on which wine you want to make. So then Ernie said to me, I don't actually know that much about wine, and you need to give me guidance on this. I said, but that's the great thing about wine. You don't have to know much about wine to know what you like. And I said, that is the essence about wine. What it's all about is the enjoyment in the glass. But what I'm going to do, put 5 wines in front of you, and I'm going to number them 1 to 5. And you don't have to tell me about the tannin structure and the flavor profile. Everything is just what you enjoy in a glass of wine. And that day, Ernie chose the Bordeaux blend that we still make today. 22 years later, is the signature wine from Ernie Els. It's Medoc based. What I mean by that is it's Cabernet based, which obviously suits definitely the Helderberg, and that's why we bought the property on the Helderberg way back in 2004. And it was at that stage when we released the Ernie Els signature. It was the most expensive wine in South Africa, and a lot of people were pointing fingers at us and said, "How can you do that without any track record?" But I think a lot of people forget that this wine grew out of the stable of Rust and Vrede. We all know what great wines Rust and Vrede made and still do. Today, from many decades later. So, and then it really got good accolades, and that is the recognition that that brand Ernie Els got right in early days. Even today we still fight maybe sometimes the celebrity status of Ernie himself and say how serious is the wine. But I always say, sometimes the people buy because of Ernie on the label, but they definitely buy the second bottle because of what the great terroir. The Helderberg offers the Cabernet producers especially. Dan?
I remember having exactly that conversation with Ernie on the show last year, where he said that Ernie Els might sell the first bottle, but Ernie Els wine has to sell the second. It's a very valid point. Scully, you and I have spent a fair amount of time with Ernie over the years at various golf tournaments, particularly the Dunhill over in Scotland. He is a man who doesn't mind a glass of wine or two.
No, for sure. He doesn't mind a glass of two. And, if he's listening in, I think we would like to also commiserate with Liesel, Ernie's mother-in-law, who died a week ago and so forth. He's in the country at present, but he's keeping a low profile, and I think that's quite good for us here. The last time we played the night out, Ernie was here, and he really kept us quite busy. But he likes his wine, and I've been around the world with him. He really does like his wine.
An interesting point that Louis makes there about Ernie needing to sell the wine on the merit of the wine, that there's only a point to which, it's Ernie Els's wine, I love golf, I'll buy it because he's famous. We drink wine because we like the wine, not because we like the person who owns it. Was there a similar challenge for you? Everybody knows Schalk Burger, famous Springbok, and now you're making wine. Did you also have a period where you had to convince people that actually this is the real deal?
Yeah, that's why we steered very much away from the name Schalk Burger as such. Our signature is the number 6, which sells very well overseas. We've sold very little in South Africa except to private clients. And the number 6 was synonymous, can you believe me? And both my sons played provincial rugby in the number 6 jersey. With my chassis, I played a little bit less than them. But then Schalk made the number 6 jersey, quite synonymous, and became Rugby Player of the Year in the world in number 6. And there was 6 cultivars, 6 barrels, So we did it a little bit different, but you have got that problem.
You've overcome it, as has Ernie, and created wine that is fairly iconic. I think that in terms of ultimate iconic wine, it is quite hard to go past the Meerlust Rubicon, and that's wine that is now stewarded by Wim Truter. We have a look at the wine, Wim. Lovely to have you on the show. It's not been that long you've been calling Meerlust home. What has the journey into Meerlust and then finding yourself at the helm of such an iconic brand been like?
Hi, Dad. Thanks. Yeah, thanks very much, and thanks for having us. I think, as you said, Meerlust came across my path as this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. There's only been 2 cellar masters prior to me, Georgia Yalatia and Chris Williams. Previous to this, I've always been working at large corporations and big brands, and also well-reputed and historic brands. But I think the opportunity to join Meerlust and be on a working farm, joining the Meerlust family, and Hannes has been incredible in welcoming here. You're just involved with the whole process, from developing the vineyard, planning, planting, and even in selling the wine, commercialization afterwards. So it's been an incredible journey, and I think we work from such a strong platform, as you say. The wine just has such a rich history. We've got such an incredible platform in terms of the development and the history and the vineyard layout and everything that's been built up over time. So our job is really just a refinement on that and just to continue with that legacy.
When this opportunity came to you, in sporting terms, it's kind of like Sir Alex Ferguson has retired. Who's coming on board at Manchester United? Are they going to get it right? Where was the balance between this is such an exciting opportunity, I cannot wait, and this is Meerlust Rubicon, this is terrifying, I've got to look after this world-famous wine?
Yeah, very much so. I think I remember one of the first tastings I did, presenting it to a group of consumers, and Rubicon, the wine is a year older than I am. First vintage produced in 1980, and presenting a tasting, and the consumer says, I normally don't open up a bottle of Rubicon before it's 10 years old. They've been drinking Rubicon for the past 20, 30 years. They definitely comes with a lot of pressure. But again, we've got an incredible team, a lot of dedication in the vineyards. That's where the wine is made. We've got this incredible farm, and so much of what's defined in the bottom is because of our location. So it really is just a privilege.
I see Reginald Peckler is watching, as he so often does, from Cheetah Plains up in the Sabi Sands. Interesting to have the legends that makes only wines with soul if I knew how to sum it up in simplicity, your wines are somewhat masterpieces. Cheers. I think a lot of people would agree with that sentiment. In terms of something like the Rubicon, and I won't harp on it for too much longer, but as a wine, because it's so established, because it's such a benchmark wine, because so many people know it, to what extent is your job to replicate what has come before, and how much can you as a winemaker throw in a little creativity, throw in a little of your own approach and interpretation into this particular wine?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think especially, I mean, given, say, vintages of the last 2015, 2017, incredible vintages, it's a tough act to follow. I think our approach is not to try and reinvent the wheel. It's attention to detail, refining a couple of small things, I think, as technology and research advances. But I think what's always stood out for me about the Rubicon, there's been this unwavering philosophy of elegance and balance, and in a certain sense, restraint to the wines. It's never tried to follow any fads or higher alcohols, more extract, more alcohol, more oak. It's always had that balance and elegance. So I think balance is not something that ever goes out of style or out of fashion. So if I think we stick to that sort of approach, that's going to always be rewarding for all of us. I think the exciting thing for us now, it's an estate wine, so all the grapes only come from our estate. And with that, there's always continuous renewing. So we're currently now busy with doing some soil profiles. We've got 3 hectares of vineyards planting this year. We've got another 7 hectares that's in development for probably the year after. So getting involved in that process, looking at clones, looking at selection of rootstock and row orientation. There's a lot of places where you can then actually have an input that actually has a massive impact on the wine for the next 20, 30 years.
Which leads rather nicely into some wine we're going to taste in a moment, because there's a real bit of history to the Chenin. Before we do try it though, Schalk, when you look at a wine like the Rubicon, where does it sit for you, first of all, as a South African wine? And how important are wines like that, like the number 6, like the signature, in terms of both leading the South African wine story, but also saying to the world, we can produce wines at these kinds of price points, which are very high by South African standards, certainly not by international, but make that statement of intent about where we feel our wine belongs?
Yeah, look, Dan, I think what's also very important is the whole feeling of, when you look from a consumer's point of view, a source of being. Where are you? Where are you from? What do you stand for? What does... the Meyburg family was a wonderful family, and Nico Meyburg, and I know Hannes very well, and so forth, and the farm and the estate. And we tend to overlook, and it was nice listening to them and talking about the terroir and, clones and the rootstock relative to, the clones that they're going to plant and so forth. And that's what's important. We tend to run away from that. And around the world, single block vineyards, site-specific wines. Stellenbosch has done a great job for connecting Cabernet to Stellenbosch and the soils and that style of wine. And just remember the destination marketing. We've had very little overseas visitors. They're coming back now. There's got to be a sense of belonging of a specific piece of soil, farm, the people behind it, the faces behind that. And I think it's coming back again. The people start to tend to do that. Otherwise, just remember, the big problem is, for me, and it's my personal opinion, Germany nearly overtook England for a few months as the largest country of South African wine importing. But nearly 80% of the German wine was in bulk. 65% of the English wine goes out in bulk. We've got a wonderful system of certification in South Africa, one of the best traceability systems that you've got. But the wine gets bottled over there, and it's got no sticker on it, what we call old bus sticker, the certification, which actually, and the 3 very holy issues is vintage, cultivar, and origin, and they're using it. So we must get hold on to that. That's very important, and Wim alluded to that, and also, like for instance, Ernie Els as a person, as a brand, as a whatever, the connection, and Louis Strydom that's been with the brand from the beginning till now. Those are the added values that sometimes we tend to forget in South Africa, and we just want to sell into the grey market. And in France, less than 1% of the volume, those brands carry the whole triangle of everything beneath it. We tend to sometimes turn the triangle upside down and the broad base at the top. You know, the Warsers, the Vinpros, and I don't have a go at them. But they control basically like the old KWV and through the co-ops and so forth. And we've got to get to the point where consumers, you know, buy into the farm, the terroir, the philosophy, the faces, the people behind it all. And you know, obviously Meerlust has done a phenomenal job with that, and you know, Georgia and Chris and stuff. And Georgia was fantastic with that, you know, with the way he took it, and him and Nico had a very interesting, you know, relationship. And then, you know, Ernie and Louis and them have done a wonderful job, you know, with that brand. And I believe that's where the future lies.
The brands we're talking about this evening will feature many times on Dan Really Likes Wine, and they're all brands that have a big international footprint. As we look at the challenges of continuing to grow South African wine, Louis, a lesson from you. If you look back on the signature in particular, was there a moment you can put your finger on a report from a critic, somebody influential, going, you know what, this wine's actually pretty damn good? What was that turning point that took it from wine made by celebrity to this is awesome wine that just happens to have Ernie Els' name on it?
Thanks, Dan. Very true what you're saying. I think, you know, a track record comes through with and that didn't happen overnight. We really started on a high bar. We got probably the highest score in the wine spectator back in with the 2000 vintage. Back then, and I think it was like 92 or 93 points. So we were very fortunate to actually come in at a very high bar. It's like obviously like a high jump athlete. You actually wait until the end, until everybody's jumped, and then you're going to try and jump over the bar. So we were fortunate from that perspective that we actually had a great start, and then it actually like became a lull in the system. And I think it's got to do with the farm understanding its terroir, understanding what we're doing. And then I would say in 2010 is when we started getting really good accolades, and so it took us about a decade to really understand what we were working with. And I think that is the reality with wine, that you only get one opportunity per year to make something really special in a bottle. We don't get a second stab at it, so it takes time. And that is obviously when I said to Ernie, you know, the only way we can really build on brand Ernie Els is if we buy a property and we can actually lay a foundation that's strong, really strong, that the property can springboard off. So in this year, with the 2015 vintage, got now a 5-star in the Platter, and I think that's that third party recognition that we're getting now with the signature is really great to see. And Wim touch on it. You know, we both Stellenbosch producers, but such dramatically different wines, because we have this great terroir in with the mountain ranges, with the oceans on our doorstep, that we can make such diverse wines within a very small geographical area. And I think that's the real exciting thing about and Schalk alluded to it, about the great terroir-driven wines, where a wine consumer coming from the international can actually taste many different stylistic wines within a very small area. And I think that is what one of South African strong points is. It's actually the ability to be diverse in a very small area. Dan?
And the ultimate winner there, people like me who get to drink this diversity of wine, which is exactly what I'm going to start doing. Well, actually, I have started already because I couldn't resist. The first of the 3 wines we're drinking on the show this evening is this. It is the Schalk Burger Senior from Welbedacht. The intensity and richness of this wine is quite blinding. First up, it's a bit of a blue collar, old school kind of label and name. What's the story behind that, Scholar?
Well, the interesting story is that school was actually created by the Dutch Reformed Church. It was one of the first schools where farm labourers' kids went to school. And we've got a vineyard right around it. And as you can see on the label, there's 1979, because it's an OVP, Old Vine Project. And it was planted in 1979. and the labourers, and it's registered as a single block vineyard. And they always spoke about that block, you know, when you talk about in farm, the school block. So it's registered as school block, the block around the school. Obviously in 79, most farmers, and, you know, me being Afrikaans, the family Afrikaans, was, you know, in England, I had my agents saying to me, but it's spelled wrong. There should be a CK with a block and stuff like that. I said, no, but this is Afrikaans. And Steen was the vernacular name of, you know, Chenin Blanc. And it's a wonderful bush vine, interesting soils, you know, because in Wellington we've got decomposed granite. But on this block, it's actually a mixture of decomposed granite and, you know, decomposed Malmesbury shale. And and the wine actually, when it came in, my son Tian made this wine. The fruit from the beginning was just very unique. And he came to me, he said, there's a flavor you can't pick up. And we were looking around and he said, this reminds me of a Karoo farm. And it was like a prickly pear type of flavor, you know, with nice persimmon pears. And the wine was just the standard. It was just from the beginning, you know, won a gold at Michelangelo. And it's just a beautiful wine, you know. And sometimes you are just blessed. Both Wim and Louis will say, sometimes you just get something that comes into the cellar as it's being de-stalked and, you know, crushed. It is just different. This was a standout, you know, and it's special, you know, only in harvest like we are now, busy, you sometimes get it in, and you can get it sometimes within a block, you know, 2-3 rows as they come in, and it's just different. You know, and it carries itself through, you know.
I love the fact you've been making wine for so long, and yet there is still such a magic to your eyes, and you just light up talking about this. And so many years into your wine career, wine is still able to do that to you.
No, but it's special, you know. You know, there's an old French saying that says, you know, the dear Lord provides, we on earth can only care. You know, so, you know, there's bad weather and stuff, you know, you can't control everything. But then these beautiful things, because, you know, I like it because, you know, we only custodians of the soil while we're alive, you know, and we've got to be sensitive to the earth and everything. And when you work closely, and, you know, everybody laughs at me, I'm a resident proprietor. Everybody at one stage was proprietor. I live on the farm. I get up every morning. I'm a mechanic one day, and the other day I'm, you know, do something else. And so when the earth rewards you, you know, because it is just phenomenal, you know, and you never know. You know, we've looked after one block, done fantastic stuff with it. Another block was a little bit, you know, just to let go, and maybe a production block. And then when you are harvesting, all of a sudden that other block comes and says to you, this is it, you know, and that's terroir driven. You never know, you know, because, you know, terroir is just not the soil, it's the aspect ratio. And, you know, I was one of the first guys to start planting north-south. And that's where my cricket pitch, you know, story came. Cricket pitch is north-south, and to get sunlight in. The wonderful book that Dr. Richard Smart wrote, Sunlight into Wine. And I went to see him, and I traveled with him in Australia, New Zealand, and California. And then you start seeing things differently, you know, and it is special.
Wim, I suspect I'm going to get quite a similar answer, but I'll ask the question nonetheless. For you, does wine still have that capacity to surprise? Something that you thought you knew what was going to be there has turned out to be something different, something better, something wonderfully surprising?
Yeah, I think we often hope and believe that we have more control and are better at what we do sometimes than we really are. And then I think sometimes you just get surprised where, you know, you see a result and you see an outcome that's just so unexpected or so surprising. And I think, you know, that's where you need to start learning really understand your farm, because, you know, there's this block where, you know, you think this is what the result's going to be, and it ends up one of being the best blocks. And making that selection and then understanding how to nurture and how to respond to that is quite often the secret, and why I think the secret of Meerlust and having a cellar master with a 20-25 year tenure, and really understanding the ins and outs of every block is so important.
I get the sense, not being a winemaker myself, but I get the sense that it really is one of the key reasons why you guys do what you do, that it is just such a continuing journey, and it's always changing, but always offering you so much. It's offered us the result of all of that work, which is fabulous wine. And what we have here is the 2015 Meerlust Rubicon. We know 2015, by and large, a sensational year for red wine in Stellenbosch. I suspect, Wim, that the Meerlust Rubicon fits very much into that particular category.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, 2015, exceptional vintage. I think the thing that stands out for me about the wine is what Chris managed to capture here is all the power and the intensity of 2015. So the wine is, has that really dark fruit brooding nose, very intense, but it still has the very classical Meerlust expression. So there's still this lovely linear profile, that really nice graphite finish. It gives you a lot of generous fruit, while still finishing that bone dry, really chalky tannin. I think that Meerlust is well known for this. That's still slight hint of herbal notes. So I think capturing the power and the really exceptional vintage while still remaining very classic. And I think that's always in South Africa for me. The thing is, with sunlight and heat and temperatures, it's very easy for us to do too much. There's always going to be color. There's always going to be a lot of flavor and a lot of intensity. It's understanding when not to do something. Rather picking that slight half a bottle earlier. You're working maybe a little bit softer in terms of the oak selection, being a little bit more gentle. And I think that's really when you get the magic expression.
You talk about this very admiringly as being Chris's wine. Yours will come into play in due course. Where are you on that timeline? And what is the challenge of picking up that baton from somebody else, where wines that they've made are in various stages of development that you then have to see through to the finish?
Yeah, I mean, I think myself and Chris, we've had conversations, and I think one of the advantages, obviously, is the vineyard team is still here in place. We have a winemaker, Louis Strydom, who's in the cellar. He's been here a number of years, and I think that gives us great continuity. But it's a process where we need to first, I think, really taste, walk, understand before we really start trying to change anything. I think, especially as you mentioned, with Meerlust, with the pedigree and the history, we're definitely not trying to fix something that's not broken. So it's absolutely just trying to capture and continue on with a lot of the work that's been done. As I said, I think the challenge for us going forward is making sure, with new vineyards coming in, new plantings coming in, to make sure we keep up with that consistency, and make sure we maintain that style. I think they've, like I said, laid this incredible foundation for us, which is very privileged. But it puts a lot of pressure on the team to make sure we're up to the task.
You might not know this, Wim, but the very first episode of Dan Really Likes Wine back in November 2016 had 4 wines on it. One of them was the Meerlust Rubicon. The Ernie Els Signature was another. We had the Gem and some Villefontaine Series C. We followed up with some Welbedacht very shortly afterwards. So I've been drinking this for a long time, very happily so. But let me ask the other winemaker. You've had a try of the 2015 Meerlust Rubicon. It looks like you managed to choke it down okay there, Scholar.
No, it's a wonderful wine. It's I think what stands out is exactly what Wim said. The beautiful balance between fruit and the tannin structure, and the balance with the chalky finish. And it's just not many times wines like this are broader, like broad wines in your mouth, and this one's got a nice linearity. I personally like wines with linearity. It stays with you and lets you think a bit about what flavor is here, that, and whatever. And it's a classical wine. To me, it's a real classic red blend.
And many would agree, including, I'm sure, Mr. Strydom. Let's jump back to Ernie Els. From one remarkably good red blend to another. Brendan Stevens giving you some love here. Louis Strydom is a genius. Love Rust and Frida. Well, by extension, Ernie Els will pick up there. And then I see Josephine Prieur joins us from France. Bonsoir, Josephine. Hello, Wim. My first visit Meerlust was in 1993, and already on that time, It was a big pleasure to taste such nice wine. And after Georgia and Chris, I'm sure that Willem will continue the legend of Meerlust wine. Happy Harvest 2022 for you and the team of Meerlust. Thank you, Josephine. Lovely to have you on at the moment. The wine that we have for you, Louis, is the 2014 Ernie Els signature. I don't expect you to have it with you, but I do know you have a fairly intimate recollection of everything you have made. Take us back to 2014, which sits before that marvelous 2015 vintage. What was that year like, and what wine has it given us as a result?
Yes, thank you, Dan. So, a question to you, Dan: Do you believe in miracles?
If you saw some of my golf today, Louis, I'd have to say that I do.
Cool, because as being a winemaker, I think you must believe in miracles, because every time we get a great wine in the bottle, I very feel it's a miracle, because if you think of all the elements that play a role to make something special in the bottle, that it's a miracle on its own. So we must be miracle makers as winemakers, and 2014 was probably one of those vintages. It was a difficult vintage. It was very dry. It's probably my biggest vintage on record. And they always want to say, volume doesn't equal quality, and that was the 2014 vintage. It was a really big vintage from a vineyard perspective. So we in the winery had to be really selective on the wine that we took to the signature, and don't be too greedy with putting too much wine in the bottle, because it was a big vintage. I think that is what the signature gives us, that we can really select the ultra premium component within our vintage and put that into the bottle. 2014, so I said, it's got probably definitely not as dense as 2015, but it's got a much more drinkability than most of the first decade, the second decade of the 2000s, and that is what I think it'll be drinking really, really well now. The 2014, and it's Cabernet based, so 60% is Cabernet Sauvignon. So definitely it'll have that ability to age, because it has that great tannin structure. And back then, in the 2014, we were doing a lot of pump overs and punch downs. And we're actually extracting quite high extracts on the wines, and I think that has toned down over the last say 6 or 7 years. But I think that is a very true reflection of the vintage, the 2014 signature. Dan.
It is named after the man who you sat down to come up with this particular style of wine with, and that now carries that Ernie Els signature name for that very reason. How much input does Ernie have on this? Does he still follow the wine? Is he on the phone every now and again asking about it? How closely does he monitor the development of this wine?
No, I think Ernie is just from a South African perspective, is a true South African at heart. So when he sits down and drinks or enjoys a bottle of wine back in Florida in the States, you can actually taste our sunshine, and that's why he's always wanted to be involved in the process of what we do in the cellar. Where are we? The development of the property, how we can improve the wines that we do make. And because he's great to see how we can be an ambassador for Brand South Africa internationally, and I can enjoy. So no, he's very much an integral role on what he wants to know what we're doing. Although I always say, my boss has to play golf in the week and weekends, and if he's not playing on weekends, he's not earning any money. So he doesn't spend so much time with us at the winery, and especially now during the Big C. He's been missing for a while, but he said he's in the country at the moment. And he said to me, I actually on the phone to him today, and he said, in this year he's coming in town in November, and he's going to spend 3 months in South Africa. He needs to spend more time here. So he's so much passionate about what we do on the farm and about South Africa. Dan.
It's lovely to hear that. I love hearing that sentiment, and we both know Ernie well. He is so passionate about South Africa, passionate about his wine as well. We've got here a noticeably different style. It's subtle, but it's appreciable. Give us your thoughts on this 2014 signature, and then what sets it apart for you from the wine that went before in form of the Rubicon.
Yeah, you're putting me on the block here. I think Louis described it very well. 2014 was quite a big year, and I think the extraction is maybe not what normally there, but I think what Louis has specifically said, obviously they worked very hard to bring this wine out. What I do think, and I agree with Louis, this wine will last a long time. It's got a lot of body and strength, and the acidity levels are quite high, which let it really last. And many times wines like this, with another 4 to 5 years of maturing, really come to the fore. It's just how the wine actually changes, in the bottle with time. So I think this wine really, in another 4 to 5 years, can maybe surprise us all. Maybe not at this moment the same as the 2015, but I think with time, this is going to be. I would like to have a few of these bottles to lie down for another 4 or 5 years and then try it, because, like Louis said, it's miracles. You never know. And I always say, wine in a bottle, it's a living organism. And people say to me, when I do wine tastings, how can that be? I said, it's like giving somebody a pet. They said, why? I said, open the bottle, let it stay open, and it dies. And this is the beautiful thing about wine. You never know, and the longer it stays in the bottle, and that's the big difference. And I think, Wim was alluding to it also, is understanding the vineyards, the winemaking processes and stuff. And the French have just got so many more years, and they write about it, and they write about every year, and they've got such vast vinotex of wine, and they know how the years change. But I think we're getting there, and the winemakers are doing a wonderful job in specifically preserving that and the differentiation from year to year. Obviously, in South Africa, many wine connoisseurs don't understand that, every year is just totally different. And I think here we're talking 14 versus 15, and I think you can taste that. But it's a well-made wine. It's a wonderful wine.
Now, there's almost a sense of quite a tightly coiled spring that as it releases, the wine will release with it. Yeah. And there's a very, very interesting story still to be told as 2014. If you have just tuned in, we are live from Fancourt at the Dimension Data Pro-Am on Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick and Pay. My special guest with me in La Cantina restaurant is Schalk Burger Senior, Springbok turned winemaker, and with me are both Louis Strydom from Ernie Els Wines and Wim Truter, the cellar master at Meerlust. Josephine Prieur following up. Bonjour, Louis. Must definitely put on my next trip in Stellenbosch Pass at Ernie Els Winery with my husband. Always enjoyed the quality of the Louis wines with friends or at the restaurant, but never tasted at the cellar with you. Bon vendange for you, Louis, and also for Riani for 2022. Riani, of course, is the better known, more famous member of the winemaking Strydom family. Wim, heading back to you, steering away in wrapping up from the Rubicon. I often get the sense that the other wine you make sits in the shadow somewhat of the Rubicon because it is so famous, it is so successful, and yet you produce an excellent Pinot Noir, you produce some splendid Chardonnay, and I opened some 2012 Merlot last week, and it was just an absolute delight. So if you will, just some thoughts on both the other wines having to compete within their own stable of the Rubicon as that headline act, and then how you see the rest of the Meerlust offering playing out.
Yeah, no, I think obviously Rubicon being the focus, that's always the first selection that takes place. So, every block on the farm gets vinified separately, and then the first selection is for the Rubicon blend. And I think what's unique about the Rubicon blend is we make that blend actually after malolactic in barrel, and then the blend gets matured. So quite early we make that selection, and at that stage we'll then select the Cabernet and the Merlot portion that's not making it into Rubicon, but is still a great representation of the blocks on the farm. And we've got 4 very distinctly different areas on the farm in terms of exposition and soil type. And the blend is always a representation on the farm. So, I mean, these are not just one single block. I think really it is a yesterday expression. So I think the Cab and the Merlot are stylistically very similar to what the Rubicon does. So again, quite linear, quite tight wines really made for aging. But I must admit, I really quite enjoy the fact that we have that sort of burgundy angle on the farm as well. And I think it's partly because of the location. I mean, we are literally 5 kilometers from False Bay. So on any given day with the sea breeze coming in, the farm is sometimes 5 to 8 degrees cooler than Stellenbosch in town would be. I think that makes it unique, and that puts us in a position where we stylistically we're not competing with the Limonade in terms of our Pinot Noir style. I think we are going to be a bit more fruit driven, a bit more extract. But I think it's a wonderful variety to play around with. I think it often poses different challenges in the vineyard and in the winery than any of the Bordeaux varieties. And I really find it finds a really truly Stellenbosch expression on the farm. And then the Chardonnay, I think Chardonnay for us has just been incredible in the last couple of years. There's been an incredible demand for it. We are currently already onto our 2021 vintage. We only have our 6 blocks on the farm, and Chardonnay is a particularly finicky variety. So yields going up and down. It's a bit of a challenge, but it's a variety that's actually getting a lot of focus from us. We really see there's a big demand in the market for us. I think the Chardonnay expression on the farm has always been a really rich expression of the fruit. We are working, and over time we're refining it a little bit, bringing a bit more floral, a bit more linear, a bit more sort of acidic profile on the Chardonnay going forward. I think it gives it great drinkability, but also I think, as with all the wines, and I think that's what really makes it interesting for me, is that ageability is very important for the farm. It's wonderful being able to speak to a consumer, and he still has back vintages, and the wines show incredibly well. So I think bringing that ageability into the Chardonnay is quite exciting.
I had some of your Chardonnay. It was probably 5 or 6 years old last year, and already it was in that beautifully slightly older Chardonnay space that it just opens up into an entirely different wine, and it is one of the joys and delights of drinking it. I do want to ask you one last question as we come towards the end of what's been a fabulous show with three absolute stars of the wine world, which comes to why we have got the wine on the show this evening, and that is flicking through the wine list here at La Cantina at Fancourt. There was not just the Meerlust Rubicon, but a couple of your others. They've got some Merlot here and some of the Pinot Noir. And I was looking through it, and I'm always interested to find out from other people what they look for in a wine list. I know what I do. I imagine the first thing you do is there any Meerlust? But beyond that, what do you look for in a wine list, Wim? And where do you think sometimes restaurants maybe get it just a little bit wrong?
Yeah, I think inevitably sometimes, you're the winemaker at the table. So when there's a group of friends, you get past the wine list to make a decision. And then, someone's having a starter, someone's having fish, someone's starting with dessert, and you need to pick a wine that sort of suits everything. So I think I like the fact that if you can find wines with flexibility. I think we make some incredible varieties. The Shannons, for example, normally for me is a grapefruit wine, and it's normally quite versatile, especially if it's a slightly bigger style. I think the Pinot Noirs, I think we've got incredible, the Grenache, the Cinzos of the world. I think those are nice wines that are, they compare with quite a wide variety of dishes, and I think that's quite exciting. I think for me, a pet peeve in restaurants is just serving temperature, absolutely, and especially on the reds. I think we're in a country where room temperature is 30 degrees sometimes. So I think we need to be able to serve those reds chilled, get them at the right temperature, and I think just makes for an all-round more enjoyable experience.
I think it's a terrific answer. Let me put the same question over to Louis. Well, what are you looking at, Louis, on a wine list? You've obviously got your own wine list at the restaurant at Ernie Els, but when you stray beyond your home territory, what are you looking out for? Where do you think restaurants can maybe do a little bit more work to ensure that those of us who are visiting the restaurants get the best possible wine experience?
Yeah. Thanks, Dan. Our restaurant wine list, I think it's, I'm always looking for diversity, but not full of total varied styles of wine. So I think it's for a Chenin Blanc, which can be quite an enigma on a wine list. You're not sure if it's oak matured or if it's without oak, or it's got a semi-sweet, or it's got a bit of more little botrytis in it somewhere. So I think that can be a bit of quite of a minefield if you look at a variety as Chenin Blanc. And I think the wine stewards and the wine waiters and the sommeliers really need to be, sommeliers are really normally on point, but the whole waitering staff needs to be really understand the different styles of the wines that the restaurant really offers. And I think the wine education to the staff, so that the client can make a really good informed decision on the style of wine that he's actually looking for that's going to pair with his dish. I think that is one thing that I would like to see more from a restaurant perspective, that we're getting more knowledge to the customer about styles of wine. Although Cabernet is just not Cabernet, and Chenin Blanc is just not Chenin Blanc. Dan.
And by extension, I'd love to see some restaurants. There are some who do it well, but restaurants empowering their staff with a bit more knowledge of not just reading out a pre-prepared tasting note, but actually having a sense of engagement with that wine, having drunk it, having tried it, having knowing what it's done, and that's going to play a big role in getting more people, I feel, engaged in wine. Just quickly, Louis, to wrap up with you, the Ernie Els brand, there are different layers, there are different tiers, different things that you've done over the last few years. What are the newest developments in terms of the positioning of the wine and what you're doing with those different tiers that you have?
Yes, thanks, Dan. I think wine is such an amazing journey, and you find your way down the path and what you're good at, and I think that is a great understanding of the terroir. And I think we really got now focused on Cabernet Sauvignon. So we've actually discontinued about 3 or 4 SKUs within our portfolio, and moved everything very focused to Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Sauvignon blends. And even our rosé now is a Cabernet Sauvignon rosé, and it's all about showing Cabernet in many different ways and styles. It's not about quality; it's about stylistically different. And I think when somebody thinks about Cabernet Sauvignon, they need to think about what we offer from an Ernie Els perspective, and many different styles. So we have the Big Easy Cabernet Sauvignon with a bit of Cinsault in to give it that more accessibility and drinkability. We have the Major Series Cabernet Sauvignon, which is much more powerful and much more pure from a Cabernet perspective. And then we have the Signature, which is Cabernet base blending with Cabernet Merlot, Petit Verdot, and Malbec. I think, and then like I said, we have the rosé, which is now Cabernet Sauvignon. So it's very Cabernet centric, which we've become over the last 3 or 4 years, but showing actually the stylistically how different Cabernet can be. I think that is what we've been focusing on and so we've actually become smaller and more focused with our approach towards what we do on the foothills of the Helderberg Mountains, which have these lovely north-facing slopes. We only have red on the farm. And it's just a much more focused approach from a wine perspective. Dan.
I remember having an argument, a good-natured argument, but an argument nonetheless, with Andrew Harris, his pre-DGB days, when he looked after your sales marketing, telling him that the only problem with your Big Easy range, your Big Easy cab, was it was too cheap. You needed to raise the price because the wine was far too good for what you were selling it at. And I think that speaks to the sheer quality of the red in general, and the cab in particular, that you produce. Scala, I know you've got an hour on the range to get to before you have some yoga, vegetarian dinner, and get off to bed. Give us a quick sketch in just a minute or two, what lies ahead for you for the next year or two for the Welbedacht empire.
Yeah, look, we're busy harvesting now. We've got all the Chenin Blanc in. We've got about 20 hectares of bushfire Chenin Blanc old, which this year is quite beautiful. We've done the Viognier, the Chardonnay, and Sauvignon Blanc is all in. We're in the Wellington area, the foothills of Groenberg, very decomposed granite soils. We're very busy with Pinotage now, on top block. I just heard today, my son's very busy on the farm, and everything's ripening very quickly at present. So we've got about 300 tons of Pinotage to get installed. So they're very busy, but I think it's looking like a good year. And I think one of the big things is, we're just looking at labor. There are major problems with labor. When you're trying to really work finely with stuff and obtain old bush vines and stuff like that. I don't want to cast a shadow on this. 3 weeks ago, they cut down 4 Eskom poles, and any farmer like myself, the power spike burnt out all our cooling. We couldn't get parts in South Africa, so we actually started a week late because we're in a state, so everything's grown, made, and bottled on estate. And we try to get an exemption to let it be, harvested elsewhere and so forth. So it's always difficult times, and to Louis and Wim, good luck in the cellar. My dear friend Charles Back says you can pre-plan a harvest a year ahead and do everything. Then something happens during the harvest period. Something breaks, or and or rain comes and stuff like that. So it's a wonderful time, and you can only be as good as what you're in the vineyards and in the cellar, and and people don't realize that it's not a finite art. It's not 10% of this, 3% of that, because there are so many. And I think really summed it up nicely when he said it's a miracle. Because sometimes if you think about the magnitude of things that can go technically wrong, and to get a good wine, and I would like people to realize that having a good wine in a bottle is actually a miracle. It's something fantastic. And again, once a year, a beer, guy brewing beer every 21 days, there's new fermentation and more hops, more less this, whatever. Distillers are distilling the whole year. We get once a year, we get that opportunity. And if you're in a estate, for instance, and you've got 10 hectares of this, and you only get so much grapes, and you don't do it correctly, that's it. That vintage is gone. You can wait for the next vintage.
As Louis puts it, you only get that one shot a year, but gee, does he make use of it. So does Wim, so does Schalk, and together they give us that miracle that we drink very happily on Dan Really Likes Wine on a weekly basis. Guys, to all of you, Schalk and Wim and Louis, thank you so much for being part of the show. It's been a great celebration of both wine and golf today. And I think that's such an important one to do, because golf and wine are two South African treasures that shine on the global platform time and time again. And so bringing them together here at the Dimension Data Prom at Fancourt with Louis, with Wim, and with Schalk has been very special. I will leave you with one last request, and I've left it for the end of the show so he doesn't smack me with the bottle and the show comes to a sudden end. But if you haven't yet, yes, he's a Springbok great. Yes, he's a fabulous winemaker. But I think my producer Ronaldo's got a photo here that shows Schalk Burger in his finest moment. This is when he did a bit of work in cinema. That's Schalk playing Hagrid in the Harry Potter movies.
Not again.
Which I thought was his greatest ever achievement. Guys, thank you all so much. The wine list here at La Cantina, if you get up to Fancourt, features the wines of Ernie Els, the wines of Meerlust, and is well worth a try. But also get down to those estates because they're run by special people that make very special wine. And if you get out to Wellington, do go and visit Schalk. Just give yourself 4 days to recover after the visit. Wim, Louis, thank you both very, very much indeed. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Good luck with what remains of harvest. And look forward to seeing you both down at the respective estates soon. And thank you so much for joining us.
Cheers.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Cheers, Dan.
So there we go. And Scully, good luck with the golf for the rest of the week. Thanks for sharing
Thank
the school book. I will see you back on the show on Valentine's Day. We'll see us talking bubbles. There's a new person running the show at Graham Beck. We will have Pierre on the show along with the great Mr. Ferreira. Bubbles joins us. We also have a new 8-year-old cuvee from one of Schalk's good friends, Johan Rupert's Lomarat estate. Their 8-year-old cuvee released last week, and wine made out of chocolate. Well, not quite. It's the Chocoholic Pinotage. Sounds a bit gimmicky, but it's got some really good reviews. It's Valentine's Day, so why not drink wine and chocolate? Enjoy the rest of your evening. Schalk and I are off to the range, and then the gym, and then a vegan dinner, and an early morning tomorrow. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to Fancourt for hosting us here at the Dimension Data Prime. This is Dan Really Likes Wine, brought to you by Pick and Pay. We'll see you again next week. Goodbye. To join the Pick and Pay Wine Club, simply SMS your smart shopper number to 36775. It's absolutely free, and you'll get for yourself 3 times the smart shopper points on every bottle of wine bought. You'll also get a 20% discount on 10 different wines each month, a 25% discount on a case of wine, and a Magnum, some terrific competitions and invitations to awesome events.